Hi, my name is Bartek. I am founder of e-Homestead, and in today's episode we will be talking about the microgreens and a little bit about the light. So let's get started. In e-Homestead we have a special module called microgreens. In this module you can define very similar to the garden. We had plants here, and the same we can define here. Some of you may grow microgreens on field. Then you need to add them as a standard plant in a garden section, and it will be no direct seed, I suppose. But today we will talk about the microgreens, and usually they grown in indoor on the flats. So that's how the simple form look like. We define a name, standard flat size, and DTM. DTM is days to maturity, and how many the amount of seeds we need per single flat. So let's define, for example, sunflower. Some flat size. Let's say 10, just for example. And how many days? Let's say between 14 and 18. How many square inches per how many kilograms per 10 square inches? Let's say it would be 0.01. We also can define other DTMs that is useful if you plan to grow microgreens in a greenhouse during the summertime, but indoor in your garage or basement in winter time. So those DTMs can be different. Sunflower 10. We said 14, 18, 0.01. And let's save it. So it looked very similar to the plants in a garden. Season planning look very similar. We do not define sites. As I know, it makes no sense to make it that complex for microgreens. So we just define. There's our sunflower. When we would like to seed, let's say would like to seed today, and let's say harvest this day. We defined as a standard flat size 10 square inches. Let's say we would like to have 2 flats, and e-Homestead automatically calculates for us amount of seeds that we need. So we can save it, and here we have all details about our plant. Of course, in a calendar we can see that we have 2 flats to seed, 2 flats square inches each, and we need that amount of seeds to meet these requirements. We also, I would like to also mention about the to-do that we prepared, especially for microgreens. It's a very generic to-do list module, but here you can switch to templates and you can define new templates. Let's say we can call it prepare seeds. And we can define a list of tasks. Let's say the first one will be clean. Yeah, let's say the cleaning next step will be in 15 minutes. Next one can be let's say for the 15 minutes. Next task can be what we can do. Let's say for 2 hours, and the next so I just defined a template for a few tasks that actually describes one activity, which is preparing seeds for seeding. So we can save it. Now we go to tasks. Go to tasks, and now we can define a new task. This is the standard. Title, description, that's the obvious. They can be assigned to some members of our farm. Status, priority, when we'd like to do it, when it has to be done, and expires at means that after that time it makes no sense to do this at all. But here we have our template task, so we can choose new tasks from the template. And now you can see that we don't have to build everything from scratch. We have all procedure predefined. One click and you have everything added to our to-do list. It's just one click, so it is extremely useful for these repetitive tasks that we have very often in our garden. So here we have also some other options like comment, edit. You can see details. For example, like this one, and then in the details you can see that I added comment and the time when it was done. So it works like a typical to-do application with this extremely useful feature that we call templates. So that's actually all about the microgreens. There are no big differences between microgreens and garden, because the garden is a little bit more complex because it requires some garden beds predefinition, sites, and so on. Microgreens are pretty simple. If you have any questions, you can ask down below, but also here you have manual. And this manual, now I'm in a to-do, is a contextual manual. So it opens, it describes in the module that you are currently in. If I will go here, for example, to plants, click manual, microgreens, plants. Here we can go here and see all entries in our manual from the current location. So that's all about the e-Homestead and growing microgreens with it. And now let's talk about light. Light is very important. It's a crucial factor in growing microgreens, but also when you prepare seedlings. Plants are very sensitive to the quality of light. So it's not, of course, it's better to have some light or any light than no light at all. But the question is always if the light is accurate. We can describe a light in a few different ways. And of course, it's a small disclaimer. If anyone is an expert in this topic, don't be upset because many things will be simplified here. Because it's not the academic lecture, it's about the gardening, and that's what we need. So color can be described by the name, like a green, blue, orange. You can also describe the color by this temperature that we use kelvins to express it. And we know that around 3000 kelvins, it's like a yellowish a warm light, and higher the number is, the color becomes more bluish, and it gives the feeling of cold. The light that we can describe as warm and cold, that is how we human can see it. And there's one more way. There are more ways, but another way to describe the light is by the wavelength. And we as a human can see between 380 and 750 nanometers, where the lower value, 380, is like very dark blue, and 750 is like a very dark red. Plants uses the spectrum between 400s and 700s. It's also called PAR, but that's for the photosynthesis. But for morphogenetic processes, like which is like a shaping, they used the red, far red, and the blue color. And the most important part is the proportion, because the green light and the yellow part, which are on the middle, that I will show you on a graph, they are important for us, but they are not very useful for our greens. And the proportion between the red and the far red determines how our plant will grow, because if the amount of the red color comparing to the far red is small, it stimulates stem extension. In opposite proportion, we will have shorter plants, more propagated. Blue light also stops stem extension, and it stimulates leaf growing and blooming. So choosing lamps for your plants and for microgreens, you need to be aware of how the spectrum of your lamp look like. As I mentioned, the key aspect is the proportion between the blue, red, and far red. That's why only the color temperature expressed in kelvins is not giving us the full information about the particular lamp. Of course, if there is a lamp like 8, 9, or even 20 case, it will be blue. We cannot expect too much red color in a 20,000 key lamps. But if you are closer to the middle, like a 6, 7,000, you may see that that there are some differences. And also, it is important, besides the color of the lamp, actually the spectrum of the light, it's also important to provide enough of light. Usually, it's something between 4 and 14 watts per square meter. So during the summertime, in the shorter days or the cloudy days, 4 should be good enough. In the winter time, or if you grow in a dark places like a basement or some shelter or so, the 14 watts it's what you should provide to have good quality healthy plants. Also microgreens, because that's where we grow microgreens very often. Choosing your lamp, I will show you now on the graphs that even the same manufacturer, the same temperature, may have different spectrum of light. So we know that some plants prefer smaller amount of light, and then we should reduce the amount of the power of our lamp. But also we have what we call, there are plants of the short day, like let's say radishes or lettuce. And if you give them too much the blue light, which is usually during the summer, the full sun, they will start blooming very soon. So that's what we would like to avoid. And there are also some other plants. There are plants of the long day, like let's say tomatoes and so on. And there are also some neutral plants like roses. So they don't bother how much the light they have. So this is very important to know not only what kind of soil your plants needs, but also what kind and what amount of light the plant need. Also, it is very important, because I've seen this many times, the distance between the lamp and the plant. It is the square function, but that's not important. The lamp should be as close as possible, because the photons are not like a rain; they will not fall. So higher your lamp is, the distance between your lamp and the plant is, you need stronger lamps, and that costs more because the lamps are more expensive, the whole equipment is more expensive, and you use more electricity. Probably you can see this in a commercial greenhouses where the lamps are on the 7 meters high. They waste a lot of energy. But in our small farming, it is very important to be effective. But it's also important when you choosing a lamp is that you have to do an inspection of your plants. So I would suggest to not go just into very blue or very red lamps, just because you will not be able to do by seeing, by watching just the plant if it's healthy or it's not. So choose the good lamp which is good for plant that you grow, but which is also good for you to be able to do an inspection of your plants. So yeah, as I mentioned, it's just we just scratch the surface of lighting in growing microgreens and plants in general. If you're interested in more details, or if you, maybe we'll talk about some other some very specific plants, how the light may affect them. So leave us a comment in the section down below, and maybe one day we will create this video about some specific plants or more detailed. So stay tuned and see you in the next episode.